Janjigian. It's January 24th, 2003, and I'm going to talk to you just a bit about some of the history of motion detection in the security industry. Really, the background of motion detection started in the 40s with some research that was done by an inventor by the name of Sam Bagnall. And Sam was working with ultrasonic motion detection concepts. This is using sound, hopefully above the human hearing range, sending sound waves into a protected area, listening to the echo, and then processing that signal in some way to detect human motion. This is one of the early units that was used for that purpose. And in this case, these units would have one transmitter for the sound waves going out, one transducer, a transmitter, sending sound into the area, and a second transducer receiving the signal. So these units had two devices generally hung on the ceiling that looked like round half spheres stuck to the ceiling. You can see this particular unit, which was built in, this one was built in the 60s, but originally these started being made in the 1940s. They functioned very, very well, and they allowed the first use of multi-head or multi-room motion detection in the industry.
Here. She thought that we practiced and reviewed it many times. She thought it was fantastic.
So it went pretty well. That was good.
We're here. Now, after ultrasonics, what became very popular as the main backbone of motion detection systems became microwave systems. And in fact, Britain was quite a leader in this technology because of their experience building radar systems in World War II. We don't have any examples of any of these early microwave systems here, but after that, beginning in the early 1970s, ultrasonic once again became popular only because of a radical improvement in the technology, which was referred to as balanced signal processing. And what this allowed the systems to do for the first time was to begin to discriminate between random motion, which might trigger a false alarm, and actual movement, such as would be triggered by an intruder. And we do have some examples of early systems that did that. The other major advance at this time was to eliminate the need for using two separate transducers and actually combine both the transmit function and the receive function in one device. And we have a couple of those here. As you can see, this is fairly large by today's standards, but these products worked extremely well. Now, one other interesting feature of the earlier ultrasonics was that they transmitted the sound wave supposedly above the human hearing range, somewhere around 19,600 cycles or 19.6 or 19.7 kilohertz. That's supposed to be above the human hearing range. In fact, young children and pregnant women could often hear the sound, as could certain animals, especially dogs, and sometimes that caused problems in the installations. In this next round of ultrasonics, what we saw was that the frequency had been raised now to above 26,000 hertz, or 26 kilohertz, and this was far above the human hearing range, and these units worked very, very effectively, especially because they incorporated these balanced signal processing techniques. There are quite a number of different units here. These were some very large systems. This happens to be an Advisor 5 system, which dates to about 1970, 1972. This is the result of technologies that were originally developed for building anti-personnel radar systems that were used in the Vietnam conflict. Later on, other units came from other companies. There are some units here from Sontrix, from Contronics, Ademco, another Aerotech unit, and we have now the first examples of the next technology that took over in a very big way after this second round of ultrasonics, and that is passive infrared detection. Now, passive infrared detectors essentially look for body heat or temperature changes. One of the very early devices was this particular one from Rawson And for many years, this was considered one of the early and better passive infrared detectors, but it was very quickly followed by many other manufacturers who produced some very sophisticated passive infrared detectors. And frankly, to this day, here we are, 2000, 20 years later, passive infrared is still the major motion detection backbone used in alarm systems. This very large unit here has a very interesting history. In fact, that's an Aerotech unit. Originally, it was designed for protecting nuclear weapons vaults, and the government version of that is about 3 times as large. These were very, very sophisticated units for their time, and they could detect very, very small movement. At the same time, they provided very broad protection areas and were very successfully deployed in NATO bases all over the world. There are, in this panel, quite a number of examples of passive infrared detectors, and these come from quite a few manufacturers. Passive infrared detectors are now available from manufacturers all over the world. In 1982, there were probably only 5 major brands of passive infrared detectors available. By the year 1990, there were more than 75 brands of passive infrared detectors available. And here in the 2000s, there are more than 150 different brands available. So this has become a very, very popular way of providing inexpensive and extremely reliable motion detection. There was one other event that took place in the middle of this, and that was the introduction of dual technology detectors. This could combine any 2 motion detection technologies, but primarily what we saw was the use of passive infrared detection combined with microwave. This allowed for a reduction in false alarms, which was a very, very major benefit in the industry.